no time for buyer's remorse now. The disgraced, twice impeached, 4 times indicted, liable for sexual abuse, defamation, and financial fraud ex-president has officially reached the number of delegates needed to secure the Republican nomination. Happened on the very same night that President Joe Biden clinched the Democratic nomination, which means that the stakes are now set before us. Because Donald Trump will be on the ballot come November, the 2024 election will not be defined by big policy debates or disagreements between the two candidates or parties, of which there are many, but rather by a very basic question of whether or not we want our democracy to continue as we know it. Because Donald Trump has made it clear in public speeches and pronouncements that he will take a wrecking ball to the rule of law. He will pardon the January 6 insurrectionists. He will end the independence of DOJ and the FBI. He will serve as, in his own words, this is a quote, a dictator on day one. Voters will go to the polls in a few months having to answer the question of whether our 248-year democratic experiment sees its 249th birthday. That choice has been laid out and explained in stark detail by voices not just on the left or in the center, but also on the far right. Remember this from Liz Cheney?
You've said we're sort of sleepwalking into dictatorship in the United States. Dictatorship. Is that what we would have if we re-elect Donald Trump?
I think it's a very, very real threat and concern. And I don't say any of that lightly.
It seems crazy to ask this and even crazier to fathom it. But do you believe if Donald Trump were elected next year that he would try to stay in office beyond a second term? That he would never leave office?
There's no question.
You think he would try to stay in power forever?
Absolutely. I mean, he's already done it once.
He has already done it once. Now, we're seeing that these warnings about Donald Trump are reaching voters and they're acting on it. And that shows up in primary result after primary result in state after state after state. Well, the Democratic primary season has witnessed some voters expressing concerns about the administration's Mideast policies in the form of an uncommitted vote. Just take a look at what happened last night in the Republican primary in Georgia. The AJC reports this. Nikki Haley suspended her Republican presidential campaign last week, but still captured nearly 20,000 votes on Election Day and 77,000 votes overall, including early and absentee ballots. The former South Carolina governor fared best in metro Atlanta counties, where Trump has long struggled, tallying roughly 40% of the Republican vote in deep blue DeKalb and Fulton counties. 20,000 votes on Election Day for a candidate who dropped out a week ago, all with the express purpose of Republicans protesting Donald Trump. For a little context, Trump lost Georgia by just 11,779 votes, a number we all know all too well because the ex-president tried to get Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to cook up the books and, quote, find me one more than 11,779 votes. Donald Trump entering the general election very much weighed down politically by his contempt for our democracy and Republican voters' concerns about his fitness for office. It's where we start today. Political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and MSNBC political contributor Greg Bluestein joins us. Plus, former Republican congressman and MSNBC political analyst David Jolly's back. With me at the table, MSNBC national affairs analyst John Heilman's here, and Democratic strategist and director of the public policy program at Hunter College, Basil Smikle's back. Greg, let me start with you. Anyone surprised about Nikki Haley's strong showing last night?
Not really. I mean, partly it's because Georgia's early voting goes for 3 weeks. And so some of those people cast their ballots clearly before she had dropped out of the race. But when we saw 20,000 or so Republicans cast their ballots for Nikki Haley on Election Day, to me, that is a clear sign of a protest vote. I heard from many of those Republicans who said, yeah, I voted for her knowing that she's out of the race. Kind of stick it to Donald Trump. Will they stay with her? You know, will they stay on the sidelines? Will they vote for Joe Biden? Will they vote for a third-party candidate? Will they vote for Donald Trump? That'll be the key question in places like Georgia, where, as you mentioned, there's such a thin margin between a Republican victor and Democratic victor just 4 years ago.
I mean, the baseline with which groups like Republican voters against Trump is starting at, there's so much more wind at their backs electorally. There were never Trump Republicans with voices on platforms 8 years ago and 4 years ago, but it wasn't a grassroots thing the way it is now. Can I show you some of these voter testimonials in this ad?
Yes.
Okay, let me see that.
Donald Trump has caused considerable damage to our democracy about the 2020 election. The United States was looked at as the beacon of that peaceful transfer of power. And that, to me, was destroyed on January 6th. And I think the main cause of that was Donald Trump.
Trump stating that he wants to overturn the Constitution should be clanging bells and alarms for everyone in this nation.
The beginning of the term would be spent with Donald Trump figuring out how to get even with those people who did not support him while he was out of office. It would probably involve a pardon of everyone involved in January 6th, which would, in essence, say you can stage an insurrection in the United States, and as long as the right president is in the White House.
So you and I think covered the Waco speech the day it happened. And this, to me, this coming out of the mouths of voters.
I was present for the Waco speech.
You were there, but you were on my show, too.
Yes, yeah. The day, well, it was a weekend thing, but I talked to you on the Monday, I think. Right, yeah.
Sharing my horror. Well, I think so.
I mean, one of the most horrifying things I've literally ever seen in politics.
Me, too.
Yeah.
But my point about bringing up Waco is the difference between what you're seeing from Republican voters now and what you saw in 2016 is that in 2016, we were learning most of the worst things about Trump from scoops in the New York Times and the Washington Post. Now it's all stuff that he says to his rally goers from the podium. And to hear it come out of the mouths of voters is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, Trump was, I mean, it's amazing to say this given how ubiquitous he was even before he ran in 2016. Part of the reason why he becomes the Republican nominee is he has this, 100% name recognition. But there was still some attempt throughout the 2016 campaign to sort of deny when people would sort of point at things that he said and point out the implications of what they were. A lot of the stuff that relates to dictatorship, authoritarianism wasn't even there. We were focused on racism. We were focused on misogyny. Those were the things that would pop out. You could catch Trump at something and he would let it slip and there would be some attempt to kind of reel it back. And now, not only does he not try to reel those things back, but he also, comes out and says things about his penchant for being authoritarian all the time, and it is an extraordinary thing. I mean, I will say that the question, and this is a good question for Greg and for Basil and anybody on the panel. In Georgia, it's a state that I think if you asked put the people in the White House's political operation on sodium pentothal, they would say that of the battleground states, it's the place where they feel worst, and they feel not great there. They see exactly what we're seeing. They look at that as what happened last night, Republicans defecting, especially those traditional Republicans who are like Brian Kemp Republicans. Right. There's a lot of them in Georgia, a lot of them. That's part of why Biden won in 2020. But they also look at African-American voters and they see what's happening with what's been happening with Biden, at least in the polling consistently for the last couple of years. And you look at, you got a 10% decline in African-American turnout in Georgia. You got a problem. So they're both weighed down by different things. Biden's is more fixable because unlike Trump, who proudly announces himself to be an authoritarian and a racist and a misogynist, Biden can do work between now and Election Day and help and do things to reanimate that part of his base. But they both have some political baggage that they're carrying in, and that's why Georgia is such a tremulous state.
No, I absolutely agree. And, to your point, when you look at this race from a strategist point of view. Yeah. Donald Trump has done a lot to shrink his base, not expand it. And I think the room for Joe Biden is there. If you look at the Nikki Haley numbers, that's really what it's saying. It's saying that there is an opportunity for Biden to be able to go after those voters. And you said this last week, that we're watching the Democratic coalition reshape itself in our time. And I think this factors very heavily into that. And it's interesting because if you talk to Republicans, they'll say, we'll get more black votes. We're going to get working class voters. But if you listen to the Teamsters Union that Biden just met with, you have their leadership saying, well, you know what? He actually did pretty well among our members. And there may be some rank and file that will vote for Trump. But he's doing pretty well with our members, and in part because as you were talking about before, whatever concerns voters have about Joe Biden, not only is it fixable, but he will be consistent, as Democrats generally have, in terms of trying to bring those coalition members back to the table. So he's actually done very well with that. And I'll just make one quick point. Even as the Republicans and the Trump team will say that they're going to go after African Americans and working class voters, the RNC just shut down its Minority Affairs Office, its Minority Outreach Office. That office included outreach to veterans. So what are you doing here if you're doubling down on the homogeneity of your party? How do you expect to gain outreach and build your support from it?
I would just say very quickly, the issue, though, I don't think is so much that Trump's going to get black votes. That's not.
That's what they say.
It's really the question. Really, the question is whether black votes are going to stay home. And if you watched a lot of those voter voices on Katie Schurzauer just now, you saw a lot of African American voters who were saying, "I voted in every election. I'm not sure I'm going to vote in this election." That's the challenge for Biden. Is not. Is he going to lose a bunch of black votes to Donald Trump? Probably on election day, he's not. But are a bunch of African American voters going to be like, not this year?